Hello and welcome. I'm Ray Review, back again with another dark story. This is the place where we tell the kind of stories that shine a light on the darkest parts of humanity. And it usually reveals that the truth is stranger than fiction and much darker. Today we're diving into one of the darkest cold case investigations in the U.S. What started off as a robbery became one of the most botched investigations in American history. This crime resulted in the violent murders of 4 teenage girls in Austin, Texas, and it remained unsolved for 30 years. This case was paved with false convictions, false confessions, and families torn apart by grief. This case didn't just leave people searching for a killer, it made them question what justice really is. Is it truth? Is it closure? Or is it just the story we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night? This is Ray Review, and this is the story of the yogurt shop murders. Before we start, a quick reminder, I tell a lot of dark stories on this channel, and while they matter, they can also be heavy. So please listen and watch with care. And take breaks if you need to. But if you like spoken word true crime stories and want to support the channel, please like this video and follow the channel. Not only will you be notified when a new story drops, but it helps the channel more than you know. And if you'd rather listen than watch, you can find the Ray Review podcast wherever you find your podcasts. Thank you for being here and for supporting these stories. Now, let's get into it. So to set the scene, we're in Austin, Texas. It's December 6th, 1991. This is when Blockbuster was still a thing and smoking indoors was still normal. It's a winter night, and we're inside a tiny frozen yogurt shop called I Can't Believe It's Yogurt. There are 2 teenage girls, Eliza Thomas, 17 years old, and Jennifer Harbison, also 17 years old. They were working the late shift, and they were getting ready to close the store for the night. 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison was described as the responsible one, and Eliza Thomas, who is also 17, was quiet and steady, and she actually clocked out a few minutes late because she didn't want to leave anything unfinished. So they were both very hardworking girls with, a lot of promise. While they were closing, Jennifer's little sister, Sarah, and her friend Amy Ayers had stopped by to keep them company. Sarah was 15 and Amy was 13. 15-year-old Sarah was described as the funny one, and Amy Ayers, 13 years old, was the youngest of the group, still in middle school at the time. So, it's the 4 teenage girls, hanging out in a frozen yogurt shop, just doing what teenagers do. Joking around, closing up, probably talking about dating and homework. And they don't know it yet, but they're actually living the final moments of their lives. Now, I can't tell you what happened in those final minutes inside the yogurt shop, because a lot of it remains a mystery. There were no calls for help, and no witnesses who saw anybody leave. What I can tell you was there was a fire, and what the investigators found. A witness driving by the yogurt shop said that he saw the lights on around 11:47 at night. There's nothing strange, no panic, no screams, and then whatever happened in there happened fast. Because by midnight, only 13 minutes later, smoke was coming from the building. Firefighters arrived thinking that it was another late-night kitchen fire. They broke down the front door, the glass shatters, and the alarms wail, and then silence again. And what they found inside haunted Austin for decades. They found the 4 teenage girls bound, gagged, stacked together in the storage room, and all had been shot execution style. The first 48 hours of any murder investigation are crucial. But in Austin, those hours were spent mostly trying to reconstruct what the fire had destroyed. Gasoline residue confirmed it was arson, and 2 types of bullets, a .22 and a .380 caliber, confirmed there were at least 2 shooters, or at least 2 types of guns. But why the fire? Why this place? And was it a robbery? Was it revenge? Or was there some other motive altogether? The police just didn't know, because they didn't have much to go on. Here is what the investigators did know. The register was open, and there was some money gone, but it didn't look like a robbery that went wrong. It looked planned. All 4 girls had been shot at close range and execution style. Investigators later confirmed the pattern suggested control and not chaos. And the way the victims were positioned told detectives this wasn't random violence. It seemed deliberate and almost ritualistic. Whoever did this wasn't panicked. They were methodical. Evidence also suggests the attackers gained access near closing time, possibly through a propped open back door, and there were no signs of forced entry, no alarms, and no time for anyone to escape. The fire spread quickly, fueled by accelerant, leaving little that could tell the story. Most of the physical evidence, fingerprints, bullet fragments, even clothing fibers, were damaged or destroyed. Investigators have never been able to say exactly how it unfolded, only that it ended fast and violently. In the days that followed, Austin was paralyzed by fear. Parents stopped letting their kids go to work. The yogurt shop became a landmark of tragedy and a reminder that safety could vanish overnight. The police were under immense pressure to come up with answers, and quickly. Austin was terrified, and the case had gotten cold. A year passed, and then 2, and then almost 8 years before detectives finally announced what sounded like a breakthrough. There were 4 young men who were brought in for questioning. The 4 men were named Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn. Now, these weren't hardened criminals. They were a group of guys in their late teens who had known each other from the same social circle in North Austin. The connection started pretty thin. Maurice Pierce had been caught in 1991, not long after the murders, carrying a .22 caliber gun at a mall. Police thought it might match the weapons used in the yogurt shop killings. Side note, it didn't. But that single lead stuck in their minds for years. In 1999, nearly 8 years after the murders, a new team of detectives revisited the old report. And they re-interviewed Pierce, who named his friends Springsteen, Scott, and Wellborn, saying they might have been involved. But it wasn't a confession. This was a story that was told under pressure, because detectives interrogated them all for hours, using leading questions and psychological tactics until they all began to echo back the details the police themselves had suggested. There was no physical evidence, no DNA, and no eyewitnesses linking them to the crime. So let's talk about false confessions for a moment, because false confessions aren't rare. They happen when exhaustion, fear, and pressure collide. After hours in an interrogation room, the human brain will do almost anything to make the pain stop, even if that means saying what the investigators want to hear. And studies show that it happens more often than people think, especially with young or vulnerable suspects. And this won't be the last time we see it in the dark stories we tell. In the stories to come, we'll look at other cases where people confess to crimes they didn't commit, and how a system built to find truth can sometimes manufacture it instead. Tangent over. Let's get back to the yogurt shop murders. So the prosecutors built their case around these shaky statements, framing the group as thrill killers, and targeted the yogurt shop at random. Eventually, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott were convicted, largely based on their confessions, their false confessions. Pierce and Wellborn were never tried, but their lives were forever changed, having this target on their back. Now, I know you're probably thinking, these police are monsters. And it's easy to wonder how investigators could get it so wrong, until you remember how human this mistake is. Psychologists call it confirmation bias. Once we believe we found our answer, our brains start filtering out everything that doesn't fit. Add community outrage, political pressure, and a city desperate for answers and justice, and suddenly the goal shifts from finding the truth to finding relief. In the end, they didn't solve the crime, they solved their anxiety about it. For nearly a decade, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott sat behind bars for a crime they didn't commit. Inmates came and went, evidence was boxed up and forgotten about. And Austin, the city that once called these men monsters, moved on. But luckily for these two men, science did not move on. In the early 2000s, advances in DNA testing gave investigators a second look at the evidence collected from the scene from what little had survived the fire at the yogurt shop. And what these tests revealed cracked the case wide open. The DNA from the crime scene belonged to an unknown male. Not Springsteen, not Scott, not Pierce, and not Wellborn. In other words, the state's entire case, the interrogations, the convictions, were all built on error. In 2009, a judge finally ruled that the DNA evidence invalidated these men's convictions, and their cases were all dismissed. The men walked out of prison free, but not really. Because you can't get back 10 years of being called a killer. You can't undo the looks and the whispers and the lives lost while you're waiting for the truth to matter again. And for the families of the victims of the 4 teenage girls killed in the yogurt shop, the moment was just devastating. Because if these men didn't do it, then who did? For years, that question hung over Austin like smoke that wouldn't clear. The DNA profile was there, a genetic fingerprint left behind by someone still unidentified. But every database search came up empty. Investigators tried everything, comparing samples to thousands of offenders, re-examining crime scene logs, even traveling to labs out of the state. But each lead fizzled out. And then, more than 3 decades later, in 2025, Austin police made an announcement no one saw coming. New forensic genealogy tools had matched the DNA to Robert Eugene Brashers. So who was Robert Eugene Brashers? The name didn't mean much to the public at first, until investigators started piecing together his past. Brashers lived a double life. On paper, he was a husband, a father, and a military veteran. But beneath that facade, he was one of the most violent predators moving across the American South during the late 1980s and 1990s. He has been linked to multiple assaults and murders in Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee, including the 1998 killings of Sherry and Megan Schweitzer, a mother and daughter, and the 1990 rape of a woman in Memphis. His crimes followed a pattern: forced entry, sexual assault, and then murder. Fast, organized, and terrifyingly methodical. And he didn't linger or taunt police. He vanished, and it's what made him so hard to catch. When investigators finally connected those dots, they realized he'd been there all along. His DNA sitting in evidence boxes for decades while other men took the blame. So obviously, this is the time for him to pay the piper, right? Unfortunately, wrong, because he was dead. Robert Eugene Brashers took his own life in April of 1999 in a standoff with the police. So the police tracked Brashers to a motel in Missouri. And when officers surrounded his car, he opened fire, injuring one of them before he retreated inside. And a brief standoff followed, and then a single gunshot to his head ended it. Brashers took his own life and took all of the answers with him. When investigators searched his vehicle and his home, they found weapons, disguises, and evidence linking him to other assaults and murders across several states. He'd been hiding in plain sight, and in death finally told the truth, not with words, but with DNA. So his name sits in the files of some of the most haunting, unsolved cases in American history, and the Austin yogurt shop murders may be one of them. This news was bittersweet for the victims' families, because after decades of waiting, it offered something close to peace, not closure. Because in cases like this, closure isn't real. It's just the quiet that comes when there are no other questions left to ask. Robert Brashers did what the system couldn't. He stopped himself. And maybe that's the most haunting part. That truth sometimes has to wait for technology to catch up to evil. This case didn't just devastate the 4 victims' families. It shook an entire city's faith in justice. It made people ask hard questions, the kind that don't always have answers. What is justice really? Is it truth? Is it closure? Or is it just the story we tell ourselves so we can live with what's left behind? Because for decades, Austin thought justice meant finding someone to blame. But real justice, the kind that holds up, isn't about speed, it's about accuracy. The yogurt shop murders forced the world to see how fragile the balance really is, because 4 teenage girls lost the promise of an entire life to live, families who will never get their daughters back, and 4 innocent men lost years of their lives for a crime they didn't commit. This wasn't just a story about violence. It's about what happens when our hunger for answers outweighs our patience for the truth. And that is what makes this case so unforgettable. Not because it ended in fire, but because it exposed the cracks in what we call justice. And that is our story for today. Thank you for being here and for caring about these stories. If you want to keep going down these dark paths with me, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you'd rather listen in the dark, you can find the Rave Review podcast, Dark Stories, wherever you get your podcasts. Now remember, humans can be gross sometimes, so stay safe and stay curious. I'm Ray Review, and I'll see you in the next one.